Hello guys, it's Chris here, otherwise known as UtdActive on Twitter. So just going to talk a little bit about Manchester United today in terms of the updates I've had during the week and on Sunday, especially around Frenkie de Jong. What's going on with Manchester United transfers at the moment, because it looks like they're not doing anything that fans would see. There's a lot of people already stressing. And obviously the window only opened on Friday, but people are saying, well, they should have had stuff done before then and had it in place to make an announcement because the pre-season's coming. There's loads of stuff gone out, stuff like this. And there's a lot of recycled news and United fans are getting frustrated. So I'm here just to obviously calm some of your fears and discuss where the potential deals are, what's going on with Manchester United in terms of a striker. Is that going to happen? In terms of the defence, what's going on with their outgoings? It's a little bit of a detailed podcast in terms of what I've been received and some of my views around them and those sort of things. So first and foremost, we'll talk about Frenkie de Jong. So a lot of fans believe it's been slow, and on the face of it, it does look like it's been incredibly slow. You know, it looks like we've known about this for the last couple of months, at least in terms of serious sort of interest. So where is it? There's a couple of things you need to consider here when you look at this particular deal. Now, it's not an easy deal because let's break it down for you a little bit. So you've got Frenkie de Jong, who wants to stay at Barcelona as his priority, obviously. And we've known about that for months. That's nothing new. Manchester United is still pressed on with the deal, which we'll talk about why in a minute. And also Barcelona have got some financial situation issues. They've got a lot of issues in terms of debt and where they're trying to resolve it. They should have that resolved pretty quickly. This is what they're saying in the next couple of weeks or so. But they're also saying that they would only sell players for sporting reasons. I believe that came out yesterday. So when it comes to Frenkie de Jong, it is quite simple. What I want to talk about here with you is that first and foremost, Manchester United obviously still pressing on with this deal. They're still looking at it. They have the necessary funds to sign the player at a reasonable price. And you have to always be careful when you're in a rebuild or when you're trying to build a new squad, is that you don't overpay and then you don't have any sort of wiggle room in terms of negotiations with other players and those sort of things. So there's a plus to that and why that's done with Manchester United. And unfortunately, you do have Glazers as owners, and they do like to negotiate as much as possible and then end up paying whatever is required. I don't know why they do it. They just do it that way. So regardless if you have a new recruitment team or not, that hasn't changed, and that won't change until they've sold the club, if they're going to, of course. Now, what I will say about the Frenkie de Jong deal is that, yes, it's taken a few weeks, and there's reasons for that. And it's quite simple, really, is that you have a player that obviously dreamed to play at Barcelona. He's at Barcelona. So there's the shock that came 2 months ago is that Barcelona will potentially sell him. And he's a little bit shocked in that sense. So it's taken a little bit of time to convince him, because initially he thought, well, okay, there might be chances for me to stay. And obviously Manchester United are not in the Champions League, which is a big hit in terms of transfer targets for whatever way you want to spin it, is that they're not in the Champions League. So that is a slight hindrance, and that means you do have to pay more money for a player. You're a little bit hindered in terms of negotiations because you're not in the Champions League. Now, Barcelona ideally want to sell to Manchester United if they're going to sell Frenkie de Jong, because they're not a direct competitor next season. And whether that is the following season doesn't matter. Next season they're not in the Champions League, right? So Barcelona would be happy to do that particular deal. Now, there are things to consider here. Is that Ten Hag has obviously spoken to Frenkie de Jong, and Frenkie de Jong is convinced that if he has to leave Barcelona, that Manchester United would be a good place for him, because Ten Hag is there and they understand each other and they won things in 2019, is what Ten Hag has said. So there's all that to consider. And that takes time for a player that didn't really want to leave Barcelona. And it does happen. Players will leave. It doesn't mean that he's reluctant, or it's a Dybala or sort of a Pogba case where he doesn't want to play for the particular club, or he's leaving in unfortunate circumstances. It's not the case of that. It's his dream club at Barcelona. You have to understand that if you're in your dream job and someone's saying to you, we might lose, you might have to go, and you find another job but you don't quite like it, or there's chances for you to stay at that dream job, then ultimately you will want to stay in that dream job. Which is what I understand from from that example, in terms of what he wants to do. So you've got to understand a little bit around Frenkie de Jong's situation. So that's taken a little bit of time. Also, there's a meeting this week with Barcelona. Now, Manchester United side and the English side is incredibly quiet. So I've had to speak to some of Spanish journalists around Barcelona. I don't know the particular time frame of the meeting. There is a meeting this week to talk about outgoings and obviously the financial situation. Now, and this is reality of it all, if Barcelona don't need to sell Frenkie de Jong and they can resolve other issues, then he won't leave. And we've always talked about that. Now, it might be a case where Xavi actually turns around and goes, I've got Kessie, we're looking at another midfielder, which is what apparently they're doing. We've got Gavi and Pedri. Where does De Jong fit? Because he's not going to start every game. So De Jong also has to have those discussions with Barcelona to say, well, what's my future with you guys? Because if you've signed Kessie, you've also got Gavi and Pedri, and they've got all their attacking players that they're bringing in. They're trying to sign Lewandowski and those sort of things. So they're kind of, and that's obviously attacking, but they're also stocked in the midfield. So for De Jong, who has had some few substitutes this year, and a lot of the Barcelona fans that I've spoken to that are not concerned about him leaving. So there's all those things to consider. So we have to understand that those situations take time, and they're not going to be resolved overnight. Now, obviously, international duty has just ended, so you expect things to move on from there, and you expect them to move on pretty swiftly. Now, everyone's expecting something to happen in this week. I expect something to happen swiftly and within 2 weeks. It can happen at any point in this time because Manchester United are quiet in negotiations, so they could announce it at any point, one way or another, or they could pull out the deal. Now, that's where it is. It hangs in the balance. It's as simple as that. Those are the variables that are involved in that particular deal. Now, there are people saying that there's deal done on Twitter. Now, they don't help because they don't know, and I don't want to, I respect all sources. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide if it's true or not in that sense, but they're jumping the gun, and that's what causes the issue. And then there's the recycled news. So, we see stuff like Frenkie de Jong's giving away boots. There's one particular Spanish journalist who's exaggerated the situation. He's talked about 95% done. It was never the case. I think that was mistranslated, probably not his fault in that sense. And there are other accounts saying the deal has been done. Then you get the ITKs that come out that say the deal was done and there's medical going to happen, yada, yada. And then you've got the journalists that keep saying he's on holiday, or they say Barcelona have got financial issues. They need to do this, do that. They don't actually know. They're just guessing and they're assuming at this point in time. So there's a lot of problems with that, and there's a lot of recycled news going out. Now, what I have taken the stance on is that until there's a significant movement, I'm going to restrict what I talk about in terms of Frenkie de Jong. So you probably won't see much of that from me, unless I think it's required, of course. So that's where we are with the Frenkie de Jong deal, and it's as simple and as cut as dry as that. Very clear cut. And there's loads of variables involved in it. And that tends to be the case. There's a few obstacles to get over. Now, if Manchester United don't sign Frenkie de Jong and somehow it collapses, what Manchester United have been doing in the background is looking at alternatives. And they haven't discussed those alternatives because they don't want the situation of where there's a bidding war for those particular players. So not briefing the media much. But what my understanding is that they have looked at alternatives. Now, there might be some little news come out around that, which we've seen a little bit, but they are in place to give those alternatives. Now, fans will come and say, well, why are we not delivering the Ten Hag these priority signings? Well, let's look at it. So apparently he wanted Nunes, but that's too expensive, and also Ten Hag agreed that he thought, well, that's way too expensive for his type of player, so they will look for something else. And that's understandable, right? You're not going to pay 100 million euros for Darwin Nunes, just have one good season. Now, Liverpool can, because they only need one or two players. And Klopp obviously will develop him. Now, that's the best place for him. It's very cut and dry on that one. Manchester United need at least 5 players, so they can't go and do that. What they can do is sign Frenkie de Jong, because obviously he's a statement signing, and he's a midfielder, is what they require. So there's a lot of things to think about in that sense. And I think, you've got to be a little bit patient. Now, I know that's me being a bit critical of the Man United fan base, but you do need to be a little bit patient, because it's not easy always getting your priority signings. And obviously, you look at Timber. We're waiting for Timber's decision, and we're also waiting for Barcelona to make a decision. Now, Manchester United can't control that, whatever you do. Even if it was Chelsea negotiating or Manchester City, it would be the same situation for Barcelona. Now, it might not be the same situation for Timber because he has a few situations of what he needs to resolve, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So that's where we are with Frenkie de Jong. I'm happy to discuss it further in Discord, but there isn't any more things to discuss about it. Now, what I will say to end that is that anything can happen in hours, days, and weeks regarding that deal. So keep an eye out on that one. Now, let's talk about outgoings. So there hasn't been much movement in terms of outgoings at the moment. We had some stuff yesterday from Laurie from The Athletic, who has direct links to Manchester United. They said that Ten Hag will look at Anthony Martial during the pre-season. Now, that's quite obvious why you would do that. Is one, I don't think that the striker market is as big as what people think, and I think it's quite limited. Let's take an instance for it. Darwin Núñez went for 100 million euros. Now, I know keep referring back to it, but the transfer market's incredibly expensive right now. So that's why you'll see in the news of Antony from Ajax, the Brazilian winger, because they've probably moved away from a striker and they're looking actually, we could probably move Rashford and Martial as rotated strikers next season. And that's just me giving an opinion, but that's what it looks like. So you got to understand that from that point of view is that they've probably moved away from a striker. And they're probably now looking at a Brazilian winger that obviously Ten Hag thinks he could do it. So Manchester United started some formal negotiations with Ajax. It's not been completed yet, but we'll see what happens with that one. That's why they moved away. And I think that's why he's going to give the opportunity to look at Anthony Martial. And obviously, he believes he can improve Rashford. Now, one of the reasons why Ten Hag was hired is that he can turn players' fortunes around and make them play as good as they did previously or better, which is what we've seen in numerous players. So I can understand why they might not go for a striker this summer. So we have to look at that point of view. And that's probably why at the moment. But now if Martial doesn't do well in the pre-season, then he might be sold and they might look for a forward. So there's those variables. I'm not going to rule it out at this point in time, but there's a variable there that is a potential opportunity if Martial leaves. But at the moment, that's all up in the air. Similar thing for Wan-Bissaka. So Manchester United want to sell him. He's not in any negotiations with the clubs at the moment. We'll have to see with that one at the moment. Now, getting a right back will depend on Wan-Bissaka leaving. But there are some clubs interested. Manchester United do want to sell him. So we have to look at that. That's this summer. Alex Telles might be available. We don't know yet. That hasn't been decided, but there is a decision to be made on that one. And there's a few other players like Dean Henderson. Will they give an opportunity? We'll have to see on that one. But Manchester United will be able to make some a reasonable amount of funds from outgoings this summer. Just going to take some time. It's not FIFA. It's not Football Manager. It will take time. And there aren't any other clubs that have sold their players yet, so it does take time. But for some reason, people get stressed about it, but we'll see what happens with that one. All right. Now, let's talk about Timber. So Timber's gone incredibly quiet. There's a lot of news around him potentially staying from a couple of people. People know who they are because it comes through my Discord a lot. But what I want you to say this is that Manchester United haven't closed the deal for Timber. What they have is the opportunity with Ajax to do it at any point. The relationship's so good, they could do it within a day, just sitting there in a meeting in an hour or two. So there is negotiations going on with that one. And Timber is waiting to see what happens, which has been reported by Fabrizio Romano. It's not my news. This is correct, wherever that is. So, and I said this I think it was a couple of months ago, that the fee would be around 45 million to 50 euros, which is now being reported. So Timber needs to decide what he wants to do. Now, there's some things saying that Louis van Gaal is getting involved. He's not getting involved. Now, Louis van Gaal is, the way he speaks in interviews sometimes sounds that he's not getting involved. Timber will decide on his own. He's his own player. He'll decide on his own future. What he wants is insurances that he will play for Manchester United enough to be in the World Cup. Now, I don't see that being a problem. being that obviously the right back is an issue for Manchester United, and also the centre backs are an issue for Manchester United. One being that, if we're being critical, Varane is constantly injured. He's a top defender, but he's constantly injured, so I don't expect him to play full seasons. You could potentially consider that a transfer mistake last year. Could have gone for Pau Torres. Obviously, Varane is top defender. He's won so much. I'm not going to criticise it too much. Harry Maguire's performances weren't good enough as a player for Manchester United. We don't know what his future looks like. Obviously, he needs to improve next season, or he could be in trouble the following summer. So there's all this, and I think Timbers has got an easy chance to get into that Manchester United team. And obviously, Ten Hag has already spoken to him before he left Ajax and after he went to Manchester United. So there's all those sort of things that go on. But Timber needs to make a decision. And obviously, he's probably going to have a little bit of a holiday, but he needs to make a decision on what his future looks like. Now, that doesn't help Manchester United in terms of pre-season, but Manchester United want to sign Timber, so they're willing to wait a little bit longer on that one. But again, I must stress that Manchester United have targets that they could easily go and sign and lined up. So it's not like as if they're relying on those particular ones. Now, fans will say, just leave the deal, forget about it. Yes, I know, but you want the priority targets, so they do take time. If you can't get those, then the other alternatives are fairly easy to do deals with. Also looking at Pau Torres potentially and try and negotiate a fee down with him. So they could go for two defenders this summer, which is what I believe they need. They also, if Dean Henderson leaves, they'll probably look for a new goalkeeper that can challenge De Gea for his first team spot. His future looks uncertain. Over the year, we'll have to see how he does under Ten Hag. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Manchester United at the moment. And the other problem you've got is you've got the Glazers that like to negotiate every single little fee. So although you've got a restructured change in terms of, the staff and recruitment level, you're still going to have the same old problem in terms of your budget and obviously haggling for fees and stuff. Now, what I will say about Manchester United is they're not in a position to haggle too much, would be my message to the club, is because you're not in the Champions League, first and foremost, which means you're not, in theory, and obviously Manchester United are a massive, massive club, but in theory, when you're talking about transfers and negotiations, you're hindered in terms of the player, so you do have to offer him slightly higher wages than normal because they're not in the Champions League, so if they're going to drop down, you do need to do that. Now, Manchester United, a lot of people have left already, so they've got a lot of money in terms of the wage structure, so that's fine. But you also need to be willing to meet a little bit closer towards the valuation of players that the clubs have set, because you're not in the Champions League, and they will say, well, okay, well, we're in the Champions League, we can offer this player this and that. What do you offer? You have to give us a little bit higher. And that's how it works sometimes, I'm afraid. With transfers, they're not done in 24 hours. There are some that get done pretty quickly, but these big transfers, like you're talking about Timber, who wants to decide if he moves or he could stay at Ajax, be in the Champions League and be assured of his World Cup spot. You're never assured of it if you go to another club. He's young, so you need to understand a little bit on that one. And obviously Frenkie's decision, moving from his dream club to another club, is a little bit difficult. So there's a lot of things that take time. The window's only opened on Friday. This is my message to fans. And we're going to close off on this one. My message to fans is this, all right? Is that the transfer window opened on Friday. Manchester United have not made any signings yet, and it's been open 5 days. Now, there's a pre-season coming, so you would expect them to have at least 2 signings done before the pre-season. Now, the reason why I'm not, a lot of people say to me, why are you calm? You're crazy to be calm. Well, if they don't make any signings by pre-season, then we have to start to look at it and think, there's a cause of concern here. But I'm not going to do that at the moment. And until that happens, there's no point in us panicking. Now, I'm not expecting much from Manchester United next season. And that is why I'm a little bit calm in terms of their transfers. Now, what I am expecting them to do, excuse me, is challenge for the top 4. Now, they won't obviously challenge for top four if they don't make the signings they do. But if they do make the signings before obviously the season kicks off, then they should be in a position to challenge for top four, because I think Ten Hag has the ability to be able to do that in his first season. And obviously, Tottenham are going to be there. They look like they're going to challenge. They've got some good signings coming in. So it's a little bit difficult. But that's what I would expect them to do, is challenge for top four. Now, this is a project. This isn't something. Let's take the complete reset, okay? In the last 3 years of Ole, everyone was talking about rebuild. This is a new era. And it collapsed, let's be honest. It collapsed for whatever reasons, as we know, it went. So it's a complete reset of the project, complete new start, complete new team, complete new relationships. Okay, new manager, new ideas, new style, selling some players, buying some players. Now, your expectations need to be that I don't expect Manchester United to be challenging for a title next season. It would be absolutely crazy for you to do that. I just expect Manchester United to have a style of play good football, and get some very good results out of some of those good football. Now, we haven't seen good football from Manchester United in a good while. We had that season where they finished second, but we haven't had them, have the good start they've had. So you've got to understand that a little bit, is that there's a complete reset at the club. So lower your expectations of where the club's going to finish. And also, if Manchester United can create a style of play and also build in the new football structure they're doing and get those good results out of those good style of play, then you can consider that a form of success. Now, you could argue that they should go and win the Europa League or go and win a trophy. Now, that could be a good target to have. And I would be in agreement in terms of the fans saying that. So that's something that they could look at in terms of moving forward and sort of breaking the duck from not having a trophy for quite a bit of time, which is a Manchester United's club of their sort of stature. You would want them to be winning trophies in that sense. But there is a project there and it is ongoing, and you need to be patient. And that is why I'm not concerned. And from the stuff that I've been told in terms of transfers, look, Manchester United are going to make signings. It's just going to take time. And you know this, you have this every season. Now, you have to take the expectation is that Ten Hag would want certain signings. And they don't want to make mistakes in the transfer market. And if you look back, and we'll finish off on this, Manchester United have made huge mistakes in the transfer market. And even in Ollie's well, we can go back to the start, can't we? We can look at Louis van Gaal's era, where Di Maria came for wages and left after a season, as an example. And there's a few other players like Falcao. There's a lot. They've been making mistakes for a lot of years. And then you look at sort of Mourinho's era, didn't get a centre back, got Lindelof by. They've done okay. But they haven't set the world alight. There's been players that have come in like Memphis Depay that came in Louis van Gaal's era who didn't do well. So there's a lot of things that they've been making mistakes on the market. If you look at Ollie's era, for instance, you can look at Maguire. Although, yes, he had a good season, second, and he could still turn that around. But £80 million, again, overpaying for a player. There's no excuse to start doing that now. Fans will say, well, they spent 80 million before, why they did now. That's not the reason to do that. It shouldn't be the good reason to do that either. So they've made mistakes. They made quite a few mistakes. They played the wrong players a lot, and that's happened all the time. And there's been a lot of that going on. So Ten Hag and obviously Manchester United want to make the right signings, and they don't want to sacrifice in terms of what they want to do. They don't want to make transfer mistakes. So you have to be a little bit patient in terms of your transfers, because sometimes it's out of Manchester United's control. So they can't control who they're signing, or in terms of the decisions from the players or from the club that will potentially sell. And that's what we're seeing with the likes of Timber and obviously Frenkie de Jong. Now, I see Anthony from Ajax being an easier deal than those other two deals. Now, it is possible for them to do it. It's not concrete at the moment, but I see that one being easier. I also see Pau Torres being an easier deal than Timber and Frenkie de Jong as well. So there's those things they need to consider. And that will take time until they've looked at their other targets. And there were other transfers, like Ruben Neves from Wolves, although there's a quotation around 100 million, they're definitely not going to get that. I would say between 40 to 50 million they'd be lucky to get. So there's an opportunity there as well if they want to do it. Kante also could be available now. There's obviously issues with his injuries. But Manchester United holds some sort of interest in there, but they are a little bit concerned in terms of his injury records. So I don't necessarily see them going for him, and he'll probably sign a new deal at Chelsea, depending on what they do in the transfer market. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of understanding of what the deals are and where we are with it. But I appreciate you guys today, and I hope you have a good week, and hopefully we hear something maybe even this evening, or maybe we'll hear something during the weekend. But if I do get anything, obviously I'll tweet it or put it in Discord. Make sure you jump into our Discord. A lot of people in there talking about Manchester United. And also keep an eye out on my Twitter and make sure you like and subscribe on this video. But I appreciate you guys and have a good rest of the week. And I will talk to you soon if I have any further updates.